officer.
Guys, welcome to the 1078 Project podcast. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine. He's been a mentor in my law enforcement career. When I was a young man, stepping into law enforcement at 21 years old, with limited life experience and not really knowing what to do with myself or where to go. This man, along with the rest of my shift, came together and kind of mentored me and really didn't give me the opportunity to fail. So for that, I'm forever grateful. I really appreciate you, man. Today's guest is Lieutenant Joe Litzinger. What's up, dude?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Welcome in.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming on. This is something we've been talking about for quite some time, and whenever I decided I wanted to start this, you were the first guy I thought about. You just have so much experience, and I feel like the things that you've given to me and the things I see you give to guys at our police department, nobody else is doing stuff like that. So I'm forever grateful, and my goal is that we can take this and spread it around the world, and everybody gets a little piece of Joe Litzinger in their life. So
I don't know about all that, but I appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, so I'll give you a second. So I'll give you a second to kind of tell us who you are, what you've done in your law enforcement career. You kind of go through, some of the things that you've done, and then my goal is to just provide you the opportunity for this to be like your autobiography. So we'll start at like your childhood, where you grew up, what your family dynamic was like, and we'll kind of move from there chronologically and into law enforcement and so on and so forth, and your incident that you were involved in, and then how we dealt with it. So
perfect.
If you want to, the floor is yours. You can kind of tell us who you are and what you've been doing. And
all right. I got great parents. They've been married for 40 plus years. So great foundation there. I got an older brother and a younger sister. Grew up in Catholic school. Mom and dad were super committed to us going to Catholic school, so paid for that. Grade school, high school. Went to DeSmet High School. My brother went to DeSmet High School. My sister went to Incarnate Word. So at one point they had
fancy.
Yeah, they had three of us in private school. So I know that was a huge expense and a huge burden.
Financial burden for sure.
Yeah, financial burden for sure. Yeah, but it was important to them, and so had a good foundation in Catholic church and private school.
What dad do for a living?
My dad worked for McDonald's Corporation.
Okay.
So he worked for an independent owner-operator for a long time, and then so that's kind of how McDonald's works. Like some stores are corporate stores, and then some stores are owned by people. So he worked. He was kind of like the guy that made sure that the owner-operators were doing what the corporation wanted them to do, following those rules. So worked his way up from grilling burgers and cooking fries to all the way up to the corporate world, if you will.
It seems like a thing of the past. Doesn't seem like people can really do that anymore.
Right. And was real successful with it until he got sick and then had to retire. So still alive and kicking, though, both of them. They live out in Innsbruck, so a nice little retirement community out there. So out of high school, went to college just for a brief minute. Had got married young, had kids young. So that was.
How old were you when you first got married?
19.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So my first little girl was born when I just turned 18. So that kind of changed the college route for me.
Yeah, grow up quick.
Yeah. So started working 40 hours a week, doing whatever I could to support them.
What kind of job did you have?
I worked at MEMC, as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
In O'Fallon, yeah. Worked my way up to a shift manager pretty quick. I liked that job. It was cool.
Were you living on your own at that point, or did you live with your parents?
Yeah. We initially we lived. We finished the basement, lived at home with mom and dad, and then we lived with her mom and dad for a little bit, and then that doesn't work well.
Yeah.
So we moved out and got our own place. So I was 20 years old, had my own house, had two kids by that point, and so things were going pretty good, I guess.
Yeah.
Prospectively, but going back to school just wasn't a thing for me. So getting into law enforcement, nobody in my family was ever military, law enforcement, nothing like that at all. But her brother worked for Lake St. Louis Police Department, so I would do a couple ride-alongs, but really going back to what made me think of doing this profession, which again was it just worked out. But I used to always have, like, I remember back as a private school kid, with your uniform on and everything else.
Yeah.
My dad worked for McDonald's, right? So when money was good, mom would take us to McDonald's, right? When money was bad, we went to White Castles. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
I feel you.
there was one White Castles. It was still there today. It's over there off of 94. So I can remember like being in McDonald's as a 9, 10, 12-year-old kid and seeing cops come in and out, and just I don't even know if they were St. Charles County or Highway Patrol. It didn't really matter. They were big, in my eyes, I was a little guy, so they're just big, strapping men they looked sharp, they carried themselves well, and I just always had that respect, like that awe of it. And then, I used to love playing with like G.I. Joes and action figures and stuff, so I don't know that if I ever would have done the military or not. I don't know. I mean, I guess it was never a thought of mine. I did well in school. I liked school. I just figured, I always thought to myself, if I didn't end up doing this and didn't have a daughter and, all that road, I probably would have done something boring and like accounting. Like I was really good with math and numbers and stuff. So I don't know where I'd be today if I was an accountant. That sounds really different.
Sounds boring, man.
Yeah, it sounds really boring.
Sorry if anybody's an accountant.
Yeah. The world needs them, but I just look at where I've done and what I've done in my life, and it just doesn't even seem practical. But anyway, so I was working at MMC. I worked what they called weekend warriors. So I worked 12 hours on Saturday, 12 hours on Sunday, and then my third day was Thursdays. So you work 36 hours, you get paid for 40. So it was actually really nice as far as going to the academy, because I went part-time. So you went Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you rotated Fridays and Saturdays. So the schedule worked out perfect as far as going to school. So I started the academy. When I signed up for the academy, it was actually still at the jail over there in St. Charles. And then by the time I started, it was the very first class that had moved over to the community college.
So you went to Eastern Missouri?
Yes, okay. Eastern Missouri Police Academy. So that was, did that for a year.
What did you think about the academy? Was it what you thought it would be? Because I didn't really think it was. Not that it was bad. I just didn't think.
I think it would have probably been different if it would have stayed at the jail. It would have been more structured. But with it moving over to the community college and then going part-time, I just think that it was, we'd show up sometime and they'd be like, go to classroom 111, and you'd show up and 111 was like a closet. It was so it was just real unorganized. The training coordinator at the time wasn't to the caliber as they are today. So,
they've made leaps and bounds, that's for sure.
So it was just different. I be honest with you, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, I really thought it would be a lot like boot camp. I thought everything would be super regimented, super structured. I just thought that it would be more intense, I guess, would be. And I'm sure there's academies all over the country that are like that, but I just thought it would be you've taught protocol before, which is like For people that are listening that are unfamiliar, it's almost like Hell Week for buds, I guess, except for a much more dummied down version of it, where they just run you, and they try and weed out the people that really aren't supposed to be in law enforcement. They try and mentally break you. And I really thought that I went to the 6 month. I really thought the entire thing would be more like that. I think you were at my protocol day. I'm pretty sure that you were. But I thought the entire academy was going to be like that. It's like, it just didn't have the intensity of the vigor that I thought it would have. And making that jump into law enforcement, I feel like you're missing some of that hardness. Me going to law enforcement at 21 years old, I had limited life experience. I had a pretty rough upbringing, and a lot of stuff in my life, we weren't financially stable, and it wasn't too much for us not to have electric or for our water to be shut off. Or my mom always said it was robbing Peter to pay Paul. So one month you'd pay the water bill, the next month you pay the electric bill, just to try and keep both of them on. So I had some life experience from just not having the best upbringing in the world. Not that my parents were great, but financially we just didn't have the money to really to do the thing, So I had some life experience from that, but I expected that the academy was going to prepare me more so to really be a policeman. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think they've gotten way better. But I guess I just, not knowing, I was super green to life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, same.
Born and raised St. Charles County. My parents, both worked. I didn't, I had my core group of friends. I didn't want, I went from to grade school to DeSmet, and most of the people that I went to grade school with, went to St. Dominic, stayed in St. Charles. So, I didn't, when I went to DeSmet, it was, 3 or 4 good friends, and we hung out all the time. So I didn't do a whole lot of going out to, high school parties, and it was just a different crowd, and so I didn't have a whole lot of. I was super green to life. I just didn't,
limited life experience.
Yeah, didn't go to college, didn't go to the military, so I didn't have wild times, and so I just I show up to school and tried really hard, and like super structured and everything, because again I had family that needed me to do well. I was paying for it myself. I didn't have the ability to. Yeah. My wife at the time didn't work. She was going to school, so it was it was important for me to succeed in it. So
yeah,
I probably got more out of it just because I.
You had a lot riding on it.
Yeah, I had to do well. If I didn't do well, then I didn't want to work in a factory the rest of my life.
Yeah, for sure.
So I had to. I had to make sure that So I probably got a lot out of it just because I was putting a lot into it. But I would agree with you that it was lacking in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Which again, as an instructor now, giving back, you try to do more. You try to push harder. You try to make protocol harder. You try to do the things that maybe that they didn't do before, Yeah,
because I think you could agree that, man, even the atmosphere, I think I went to the academy in 2011. The atmosphere surrounding law enforcement in 2011 was completely different than the atmosphere surrounding law enforcement now. 100%. These guys are stepping into law enforcement facing a very different society than when you stepped into law enforcement, when I stepped into law enforcement. I do feel for those guys, and I think you're right. I think it's almost our job as I guess, the senior people,
sure,
to prepare these guys, because they're not facing that same, overall, I don't know what the word that I'm looking for is, but supportive, I guess, overall supportive society. Like, law enforcement as of now is under more scrutiny than it's ever been. And these guys are stepping into law enforcement, facing things that I never faced when I first stepped into law enforcement. I was given some grace, I was given some time to really learn how to be a police officer and truly to make mistakes. And it seems like that society is not willing to accept that law enforcement makes mistakes anymore. That these guys have to come out of the academy really, really prepared to be good, strong policemen that have solid morals, and they they don't have time for a shift like you guys did to mentor me and to grow me into the police officer that I needed to be. Because I truly feel if it wasn't for you and Matt Main and Eric and, you know, Dom and all those guys, whenever I first got on that shift as a 21-year-old kid, you guys making prom jokes like, hey, you going to prom this weekend? You guys making jokes, sure. But you guys created, you know, you created a police officer in me, and you guys really did. You didn't allow me the chance to fail. There were failures there, and I remember one specific incident on a barricade that I remember you pulling me to the side afterwards and kind of not really reading me the riot act, but like, you know, sitting me down and telling me how important that, you know, my job was in that position and to make sure I stay with it. And man, without that, I don't know how guys would do it. And I feel for the guys that are coming out of the academy today because they're just facing a completely different situation. Sure. I want to take you back to when you were talking about, so you were married at 19, a kid at 18. What was it like being married at 19?
Again, man, I mean, not knowing anything different, I felt like it, I don't know. I don't want to make excuses. I felt like it was the right thing to do. You know, we were living together. We had a child, and, you know, we thought we knew everything, you know, so got married. You know, it's way different, you know, like I tried to reach out to some high school buddies and invite them over, you know, because I had my own place, and I was like, hey man, look what, you know, what's going on. And, you know, they'd come over for, you know, 20, 30 minutes and be like, yeah, man, we're going to go do other things. You know what I'm saying? So,
hang tight, man. I'll be right back. I got to change this diaper. I promise I'm coming back.
Yeah. It was just, you know, way different. And I look back at it now again, you know, characters built in the face of adversity, you know, like,
for sure.
Just, like it makes you who you are. And, I look at some of those guys that were like my close friends at the time, and I don't even know what they're doing today. You know what I'm saying? So, but it was hard for sure. You know, we had great times too, though. You know, I mean, I'm not gonna, you know, we had great support. Her family was great. My family was great. So it was just, you know, different. You know, I look at my daughters now, and, you know, I don't know how they would have. I couldn't imagine them being married at 19. You know what I'm saying? Like I just times are different. You know, the youth of today.
The maturity level is different.
It's way different. You know, and so I do think, you know, I had to grow up fast. I think I sometimes use that as an excuse for myself to say, well, you know, I didn't get to do wild and crazy things when I was, you know, that age. So I probably used that as an excuse to do it later on in life, you know? And, so I definitely, thought I made some good decisions at the time. Looking back, I did make some good decisions, but I also
made some bad ones.
Made some bad ones too. And
I think most of us did, you know what I mean?
I mean, you know,
it's in my opinion, you know, marriage is it requires so much, man. It requires so many strong characteristics, you know, to be married and for it to be successful, and to be a man of the house, and to really, you know, lead your family. And it takes a lot of strong characteristics. And to be 100% honest, I did not have those when I was 19 years old. I didn't have them when I first got into law enforcement. You know, I truly think that law enforcement was almost like, for me at least, it was almost like when you stepped into it, you instantly were expected to be super mature. So I know guys that rose to the occasion, and I feel like I'm one of those guys that kind of rose to the occasion thanks to the people around me. And I also know guys that just didn't, man, that just, they couldn't do it. Because it is such a heavy load that you're in chaos, you're supposed to be the calm one. Well, try doing that at 21. You know what I mean? It's a really difficult thing. And I think, you know, sometimes as cops, we use law enforcement as like the reason why our marriages don't work. But I also think that if you use the things that you've been taught and the characteristics that you've been taught on de-escalating calls and communicating with people in crisis and everything else, if you use those same tasks or those same skills at home, I really think it could lend you well to law enforcement. And dude, we suck as husbands, most of us, to be 100% honest. We're just not very good husbands because the job requires so much of us. But, you know, we use our job as an excuse, but I truly think that, you know, if we're taking everything that we've been taught, all the skills that we've been taught in communicating with people, and we use them at home, man, it could be a game changer.
Yeah. I would like to, I mean, you know, you brought up a good point. I think we suck as husbands as young cops.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I think
that's kind of what I meant there.
Yeah. I think as you mature in the profession and get better at, you know, not holding everything in and communicating and learning all those things and really get good at that, it does play 100% into your home life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because communication is everything, especially in a marriage. You know, I've sat down with so many young cops, and they're talking about, man, this is going on with my wife, and this, and like, have you told her that? Have you talked to her about it?
Right.
Have you told her that you're upset about it? Have you told her that it bothers you?
Right.
It's like, well, no. It's like, well, dude, like, you're a grown man. You know what I mean? Like, you're a grown up, dude.
Right.
Like, you gotta, if you want something to change, you have to fix it. You know what I mean? You have to be willing to have that difficult conversation. And I get it. Those conversations are hard to have, but, you know, you have to be willing to have those conversations. And I guess what I was kind of getting at, when you're 19 years old, you know, married, it's super hard to be able to have the confidence and, you know, that leadership to really develop a relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember, you know, being a young cop when I started. So I went to the academy in 1997, graduated.
Man, you're old.
Yeah. Graduated in 98.
You know, 6 or something like that?
Yeah, probably. Maybe not even that. But graduated in 98 with a job at Ladue. So I worked there for a couple of years, and then starting in O'Fallon, I started, you know, again, O'Fallon was super young at the time. You know what I'm saying? There was, so everybody wanted to hang out, work out. You know, that was my first real experience getting back into, like, high school. You know what I'm saying? Like, with your friends. Yeah. Because Ladue was good. I mean, I worked there for 2 years, but it was an older department. You know what I'm saying? So I'm a 21-year-old guy. I can remember my very first day. So I applied when I was in the academy. I still had like 6 months to go, and went through the process. The processes back then used to take 3 or 4 months, you know, so you applied early. And so I got the job. I go to Leon's out in the city, probably my third time going out to the city.
Yeah.
Because I hate.
It's not in a very good spot either.
I hate the city. So I go out to Leon's, and they try on some clothes. They put all this stuff in a box, right? I mean, it was 2 boxes full of stuff. And I went home super excited about all this stuff. Still didn't know what I was doing with all this gear. But I remember I started in May of 98, and so it's warm outside. So I show up to work with all this stuff in my uniform, short sleeve shirt, tie. You're not supposed to wear a tie with a short sleeve shirt, but they gave me one, right? So I had it on, my hat on. I mean, I got on my truck, and I just had everything on, plus still a box. And again, I probably had that guy at Ladue that was like, "Hey, what are you doing, man? You look like an idiot."
Hey, let's fix you.
Yeah, I was like, "Yep, I probably do." So, but no one teaches. Like, that's not what they teach you in the academy. They don't teach you
how to dress.
Yeah, where to put all your stuff, right? So, so it took me a little while to do all that, but that was it was an older group of guys there. So I was the young guy coming into the mature zone, if you will. So there wasn't a whole lot of crazy, like, let's go out and party all night. You got part of a small group. Your squad was only you and 2 other guys and 1 sergeant.
Is that how many people worked tonight?
Yeah, it was three on a shift. Yeah, we had 3 zones, three on a shift.
My goodness.
Every once in a while, you had a 4th if there was one guy that did, like, training vacation relief between the 4 squads. So every once in a while, you'd have 4. But, yeah, typically it was 3 guys and a sergeant. And the sergeant usually fell asleep about midnight on nights, and during the day, you never hardly saw him. But again, my first high school party was when I was
a cop.
So I show up to this huge, I mean, in Ladue, everything's mansions and millions, right? So show up to this huge house, and there's a cars everywhere and there's kids everywhere. And again, green to the world, right? So I'm trying to like stop them all, get the coolers and like, do what we're supposed to do. Right. And my sergeant's like, just get them out. Like, you got to get them out of here, man. Like,
they need to leave, man.
Hundreds of kids.
The goal is
here.
to get them to go.
Yeah. Like, we're not trying to arrest everybody here. I was like, well, why not? That's what we do. So it was good for me to kind of get my feet wet in a calmer area, if you will. And Ladue was great. It was just, I was born and raised in St. Charles, man. I wanted to get back to St. Charles. I applied to places. They just weren't hiring back in 98. And then, as luck would have it, my dad worked with the wife of the major at O'Fallon at the time. And we had gone on, I'd seen them on different, McDonald's used to always do like trips and stuff for the families if they did a good project or whatever else. So I'd seen Alice Hankey a lot through different things with my dad. And so I met Mark, and he knew that I had started in police work, and he started his career in Maryland Heights. So he kind of knew, Ladue, Maryland Heights, everything was kind of close. So we had talked several times, and then O'Fallon St. Charles County just started, like, the rush happened, like O'Fallon was booming. And so he said, hey, if you're interested, apply. And I did. And so when I started out in O'Fallon in 2000, like I said, it was a young department, so everybody wanted to work out together. Everybody wanted to hang out together. Everybody wanted. So that was my first huge downfall in marriage life, was putting the guys and the job ahead of everything else.
Dude, it's difficult, man. You're with those guys all the time,
Yeah, and everybody, like, and again, some of those guys are still around today. Great guys, they just weren't married and they didn't have kids at home. So I don't blame them at all. It was just not having that that buddy system, that team. Like I got out of high school and didn't have that no more. So it was nice getting into a group, setting like that. But man, it was completely different back then too. I can remember, like if you got into resisting, they didn't help you until you like absolutely needed help. They wanted to make sure that you could hold your own, and they might set you up with something, like to get dirt on you, or you have dirt on them, and to see if you could hold your water. Like it was just a way different time back then. And but again, man, everything gets you to where you are now. I mean, that's why I really, looking back at all the different steps and stages in your life, it's really nice to be able to, I can sit here and have a conversation with a young officer about, hey, I see
I see what's going on
here. Joe and Matt conversation here. Like, I see where you're heading here, man. Like, you don't have to fool me. I did that. I've been there. Like, you can kind of give them police lessons, but you can really, more importantly, you give them life lessons.
Yeah, I feel like you guys did that for me, man. I really do.
100%.
I feel like I think I met Kate, like 2 years into my career, maybe something like that. So I'd already been an established police officer for a little bit. But I remember sitting down, everybody's like, hey, if this is what you really want, there's certain things you're going to have to give up and certain things you're going to have to, and without guys holding you accountable, and as much as it was fun to go out with everybody and everybody had a good time together, and, the post 4th of July things and everything else that everybody used to do, it was fun, man. But that lifestyle, and I do think that lifestyle is brought on by a lot of the stress and things that we see at work. And I don't want to overuse the word trauma, but, when you see so much all the time, there has to be a relief, and that era of police work nobody focused on trying to process those things properly. It was, you go out afterwards, you go to the bowling alley, everybody gets hammered, and we go home, we come back, we do the same thing. We go to the bowling alley, we get hammered, we go back. And it's just that cycle all the time, over and over again, that guys are trying to process things that they see at work, and they may not even know. But in my opinion, a lot of it is trying to process the things that you're doing at work and the camaraderie of just being around the boys all the time. And, when you're around the boys all the time, that's not always necessarily the best thing either. But it's like a cyclical thing. You see something crazy at work, you tell the boys, everybody, you talk about it, everybody laughs, and because that's how we deal with things. You move on, you go out, you drink, you go to sleep, you wake up, you're on, I think that was when I first got into law enforcement, I was on afternoon, so you got off at, I don't even remember what time we got off, like maybe
midnight,
midnight, something like that. You went out, you went home, you woke up, you hit the gym, you went to work, you went out, you went home, and it was just that cycle over and over again. And there are dudes that I was with that like 50-something years old, man. Like this is their life. They've been doing it for 30 years. Yeah. And they just, in my opinion, we never really found a way to deal with the things that we were seeing at work. So that was how we dealt with it. We created this super close-knit group. We all drank together. We all partied together, and nobody ever talked about it again. The next day's a new day. You talk about the things that day, you drink, you go home, and this is what you do over and over again.
And I mean, that is what, I mean, you had that shared hardship. You had that shared experience, right? So, you had a bad call, and, you talk it over on some beers or some brown water, and it is, I mean, it's not healthy, but it was a way of getting through things.
Definitely,
right?
for sure.
You were able to talk about it. Everybody around you understood because they were there or they've been through it before. And you don't have that. You can't go home and at 22 years old and talk to your girlfriend about it. She don't understand.
No way, man.
Your parents don't understand.
No way.
Plus, you would never talk to your parents about it because that's why they didn't want you to be in law enforcement. They're like, things are bad. They don't want you to see those things. So, that's 100%. That's what you did. You hung out, and if you look at it, even today, that's gone. No one does that anymore.
I know, man. It's weird.
So it's good. It's good in the fact that we don't have a bunch of young drunk cops out there. But the weird side of it is you're
losing that peer-to-peer influence.
Yeah, we've either come so far in 20 years that we're doing that in a healthier way, or this generation just doesn't hang out. I don't know. It's super.
I think the standards are set a lot higher too by departments now. I think a lot of the stuff that was going on back then, if you did it now, you get fired.
Sure.
You know what I mean? The standard has been set, and police departments are going to stand by that standard, which is a good thing. We should. The standard should be high for sure.
I mean, I can even just looking back, everybody wanted to hang out. You wanted if there was girls around, you wanted them to look good. You wanted them to be, showing off cleavage and everything else. And, fast forward to the last time we did a shift rotation, we all went to a place to have some drinks, but it was not a bar. It was, more of a restaurant kind of a thing. And then like one person showed up, out of the age group, dressed a little bit inappropriate, and everybody was like, it's time to go. It's amazing how much everyone's lives has changed. I mean, that's the environment that we have now, because we don't have a bunch of, even the young people that we have respect. It's just a different, I don't know, the whole tempo is different. The whole dynamic is different. The dichotomy of the whole thing is different, because everybody just wants to, if we're going to hang out, let's have a few drinks. Let's have some fun. And then we'll be home by 8:30, 9 o'clock, and everybody, but no one wants any drama. Nobody wants, any issues. And so in that aspect, we've come a long way in a good way.
Yeah, for sure. Do you agree that you think it's the standard that the police departments are setting, or what do you think? Do you think it's the mentorship of older guys, or you think it's a combination of everything, or what?
I wish I could point out just one thing. I don't know. I don't really know. I do think that society's changed. I think, the days of going to the bowling alley and then, one-eyeing it, trying to stay in your lane. I mean, you get stopped 20 years ago, you get a ride home. You get stopped today,
there's a very good chance you're going to jail.
In most cases, you're going to jail, and then you're losing your job. And it's so I mean, I do think the environment has changed.
Yeah, let's jump back to when you first came to O'Fallon's. I was like, you spent a couple years at Ladue, but O'Fallon's really when your career, I think, from an outside perspective, started to flourish into like you started to become the Joe that everybody knows now. So, how many years you said 2 years at Ladue?
Yep.
Came over
98 to 2000.
Came over to O'Fallon. How old do you think you were whenever you came over to O'Fallon?
I would have been 23.
Okay. Was there anybody that you felt like mentored you, or anybody that took you under their wing, or?
Probably right off the bat, I kind of fell into, so to make it all make sense, second phase of field training, like I told you, you had to fight on your own, right? So we were at Krieger's, which is now an abandoned building, but right there in front of Walmart, and there was a younger guy, drunk. He was having problems, and we started fighting, me and him. And I was trying to hold my own. I felt like I was doing pretty good. I was pretty strong, back, good shape. We were fighting on the ground, and the 3 or 4 other cops that were working are standing there, and they all started just like lobbing in the mace, right? So I remember fighting, and then all of a sudden that familiar smell,
something
right?
starts to tingle.
So I close my eyes, can't see, but yeah, all the experiences when you were in the academy come back. So fighting, and I just remember, I don't remember hearing anything, but I just remember the guy all of a sudden, like, I got an arm real easy, and I got the other arm real easy, and it kind of just, the fight was over.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, man, you're a pretty tough guy,
Yeah,
like,
look at me.
you must be a badass or something, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember looking up and finally being able to open my eyes and see, and the canine handler was there with his dog, and the dog was barking like crazy, and I didn't even hear it because, again, just stress, right? So, and I just remember thinking to myself, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. In 2 years, Ladue didn't have any dogs. Anybody around Ladue didn't have any dogs. And to be honest with you, I think I got in maybe 1, maybe 2, like, foot pursuits or resistings in the 2 years I was at Ladue. So this is second month at O'Fallon, and I'm already fighting guys, and this dog thing happened. So I thought that was, like, super cool. So I remember going to the canine handler and saying, hey, man, I'm a young guy,
Who was it? Who's the handler?
Tom Otten.
Okay.
So I was like, hey, I'm a young guy, but I've never seen anything like that before. That was super cool. And so he's like, hey, if you're interested, come on out and train. So I'd say probably Keith Lewis was also helping Tom out. So I'd say probably initially Tom was probably my guy. He was
I've heard a lot of people said that he was that dude.
Yeah, he was a super good guy if he liked you.
Yeah.
If he didn't think much of you, or if he didn't really care for you, he didn't put a whole lot into you. And
yeah.
So that was probably one of his downfalls.
Yeah.
And again,
that's the majority of cops, though, dude.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
I tell new guys all the time that your reputation, like their first day in my car, if somebody's coming to do a ride along or whatever, their first day in my car, I tell them, every single guy, just so you know, the first year of your career is the most important year. You will build your reputation, or you will destroy your reputation that first year. Yep. If you can do well for that first year, no matter what happens for like the next 4, you're probably all right. But if you destroy that reputation in the first year, it's over, man.
Yeah,
it's done with.
You got to build a good name brand, because if you don't, a good name brand will carry you.
And likely you did that. Likely coming into the police department in the very beginning, a couple months in, you're already in resistings and whatever else. I'm sure you've seen a young buck that was, building that name brand.
Tom was a super, super Catholic guy. Really, really faithful to his church and his wife and his family. He had one daughter. So me and Keith were both raised Catholic. So I think that was kind of I'm sure he kind of saw that as a building block for us, if you will.
Yeah.
It came at a fault ultimately. I mean, it got to be too much sometimes, where it was really, he couldn't see past that sometimes. But a lot of, again, a lot of good things did come from it. Trying to do, he'd invite, again, instead of going out, me and Keith going out with the people, like
the boys.
Tom knew that I was married, had kids. And so he'd invite me over, to have dinner with his family and stuff. So there was a lot of good things that happened there. Early on, Derek Myers was a detective whenever I started. So not the same guy that he is today, but
shout out.
He's
one of the best dudes I've ever met.
He is great. He was a great guy then. He was just, so I don't know if I would have call them a mentor at the time, but a lot of it just the again, the environment there was the senior guys were, 28, 30 years old. You know what I'm saying? So the super old guys you just didn't really, you never really dealt with. So I would say, just again, kind of the same thing. I mean, it was a good environment of people for certain things. You know what I'm saying? Like for the job, good. For having fun,
lifestyle,
great. But when it came to home, that was horrible. They were not a good group of people to be with.
Even I came in, years and years after that, and it was that same thing still. It was that same aura. It was that same group. It was just, woo.
Yep. But it's not like that today.
Yeah, it's completely different. Yeah. I think the thing is a lot of those guys retired. Like, you've seen most of those dudes move out of law enforcement, and that previous way of law enforcement was like, you work hard, but you play hard. Mm-hmm. You kind of see that moving by the wayside. Like, I don't push that on dudes. I would say that I was in the position that probably Tom was in whenever you first met him.
Sure.
Been a cop almost 12 years, canine handler, now the second one. And I do try to like mentor young guys, but I make it very, very clear to dudes, like, listen, man, this is very much a lifestyle. And if you dive into that lifestyle, I've seen this. This is a saying that you always just use. I've seen this movie before.
Sure.
I've seen this movie. I've seen what happens. I've seen how destructive this could be. So, I try and warn dudes coming into law, young 21-year-old guys that don't know any better. I try and warn them because I've seen that lifestyle just destroy family after family after family, and marriages be destroyed, and guys lose their jobs, and, women and booze are the things that just, it's assassin in law enforcement,
sure.
man. Just
they always say
some of the best guys I know, man.
Yeah.
Some of the super good dudes, fantastic cops, great investigators, guys you want to be on a call with. When things go sideways, dudes that you want there.
Yep.
Women and booze, man.
Yeah, they say the badge will get you as many women as you want, but it only takes one woman to take your badge.
That's a good saying, man. We need to start tattooing that on people.
Yeah. We need to have it on a wall somewhere.
Yeah.
But going back to that, even like Mike Plum was another guy that's,
great dude.
Been there, years before me, and still young enough to know, but, I had enough experience to, to help out. So, my first couple of years, I was working, so I worked patrol, same thing, we had a day, afternoon, and evening shift, and midnights. So I mainly worked afternoons and midnights. But getting really into the K-9 thing, working with those guys. At one point, the chief even would let me go to trials as a decoy, so he'd pay my way, and I get to have my own room to, just to decoy for the guys. But then I got the dog in 2003, so that kind of changed a lot of things for me there. Not being assigned to a shift necessarily, doing like a power shift. So, working with a lot of different people, that's kind of where when me and Keith kind of started seeing the some of the negative sides of, that mindset that Tom had about
relationships other places.
Like, if I don't really like you, I don't really give you the time of day. Now we got a product that we're trying to sell to people, and, we're trying to, hey, if you don't use us, then we don't get used, right? So we're trying to change that reputation, and which again, get you out there, get you to the people, and so I think me and Keith did a lot to repair that. But again, that kind of falls back on who you are as a person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just getting out there and helping everybody out, and so that was that kind of started my mindset, if you will, that tactical mindset of being more aggressive with officer safety stuff and building searches and laying that foundation with the dog and everything. So
that being a canine handler it's it, man.
Sure.
I tell people all the time, there is nothing like being in the woods at 2:00 in the morning and it is pitch black and you can't see anything and you're hearing clicks off in the woods and your dog's dragging you through the woods. There's nothing I've ever done in my entire life that gives you that same feeling. There's
Sure.
just nothing. And with that comes a lot more danger, obviously.
Sure.
You know, you're on every single hot call. You know, you're doing search warrants with, you know, federal agencies, and you're doing high-risk search warrants, and your dog's being used to apprehend felons. And, you know, that's the onset of – and the same thing for me. You know, I've never been on a SWAT team or anything, but once I got a dog and I started putting myself in these positions, I'm like, oh, I should probably buckle down. I should probably try and figure out how to be a policeman. I should probably try and figure out how to limit risk here. You know, running around all willy-nilly, going after real bad dudes is not the place you really want to be. You know?
Sure. Well, you know, and again, I've had a lucky. I've worked very hard, but I've had a fortunate career in the fact that, you know, working a dog, most people may or may not ever get to do that, and so I got to do that, and then transition from that to being on the SWAT team. Again, that's not that many people get to do that, so to be able to do both of those things, really, I don't know. I mean, it's changed. It changed the course of my career 100%.
How'd the dog affect your family life?
So I had gotten a divorce before I ever got the first dog. So the first 2 years of O'Fallon, again,
Paid their dividends?
Yep. I can remember my dad. I can remember other people that were way older than me, you know, sitting me down and saying, hey, you gotta make this number one. And you can't tell a 21, 22-year-old kid, if you will, you know, that's, you know, that's running and gunning and having a great time. And, you know, there's, you know, Dr. Gilmartin talked about, you know, that rush that we have, that hypervigilance that we have. And when you're off, you crave that. You know, that's why, you know, again, when you're working extra hours, you're working overtime, you're picking up extra shifts just to keep that.
Especially as a young guy.
Yep. To keep that drive going. And you know, when you go to places, everybody wants to hear your stories because your stories are better than the accountant stories and the boring stories that everybody else has. And it's, you know, you fall victim to it, man. And I 150% did. So I'd already gotten a divorce. So I, you know, again, that was one of those things where I can remember probably great advice, probably worded not to where I listened, but you know, you'll never be a good dad. You'll never get a dog. You'll never get to do these things if you continue down those roads. And you know, don't challenge me. You know, don't ever challenge me like that, because if you say I can't do something, well, I'm going to work harder to do it, right? So, so again, I fell victim to that. So getting the dog, I was, you know, single. I had a house, but you know, moving into rebuilding everything, and so I would say that it probably didn't have the impact that it would have, like for you. You know, like you were married, you had established things before you had the dog.
Yeah, for sure.
Where I was single, you know what I'm saying? So Keith was single, so I mean, I never trained to the level that Keith trained to, but because again, he didn't have, you know, but I still had.
You didn't have those. He didn't have those responsibilities.
Right. I still had, you know, kids and had to pay for things. So, so I, you know, I trained hard. I committed a lot to that dog, to the team, the canine team that we had there. You know, we did things with those dogs that, I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen. I mean, it's really cool watching, like, you guys train. You know, like, you guys have done things that we've never done. But at the time, to send, you know, 4 decoys running out in the field and be able to recall your dog off of all 4 of them and then back to you and then have them redirect to the one that you want, you know, like, that was stuff that no one was doing, you know. But, again, it was countless hours. And so, you know, again, probably at the expense of my daughter's time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I feel you, man, for sure. So, I feel you. It's an everyday battle to pick and choose. You know, I enjoy going out and training, and I need to train, and I know I need to train. But my kids also need me. You know what I mean? And they need that time with Dad. And I've told so many handlers this, you know, guys in our unit, because, you know, my kid shouldn't have to sacrifice because I'm a canine handler. The only person that should sacrifice for that is me because I've made that decision. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's not unheard of for me to be training in my front yard at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, with my dog, because my kids and my wife deserve that. They deserve that dinner. They deserve that time with dad. They deserve that bedtime story. They deserve that kiss goodnight. They deserve those things. And, you know, I've made that decision, and it's something that I am super passionate about and something I love so much. But my kids didn't make that decision. Sure. And I think about that. That's pretty generic for law enforcement in general, is like my kids didn't choose for me to be a cop. Although, you know, my wife is proud of me and my kids, you know, tell everybody, oh, Dad's a cop and he's got police dogs and all kinds of other stuff. They love it. But, you know, that does come with certain time restraints that my kids, you know, sacrifice. And I 100% understand that battle of trying to choose, well, my dog needs me, you know, and I made this commitment to my dog, but also my kids need me and my wife needs me. Sure. I made that commitment. So I tell dudes all the time, if you're gonna take on this commitment, you got a wife and a kid, you better get ready to sleep 3 hours a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. Take my sweatshirt off here real quick.
Yeah, you're good.
Is that out of the shot? We good?
Sweet. But so you work a dog. How long did you work your dog?
Got him at the beginning of 2003, and working him through 2009. 2009 is when I tried out for the SWAT team. Mm-hmm. So the dog still had plenty of life left in him, but when the regional team came to fruition in 2004, I had just gotten the dog. I wanted to try out again, young, in great shape. I wanted to do it. I loved the tactical side of everything. I wanted to get better. So I went to the chief. I said, hey, can I try out for the SWAT team? He said, yep, absolutely. So this was a new thing. You know, there was a new opportunity that had never been in this county. So started working out, started, you know, gearing up for that. And then as it got closer, they said, hey, we had a ton of people that wanted to put in for it. So he said, hey, man, you just got the dog last year. You got your own car. You know, we don't have that many things to offer people. So he's like, and probably knowing that the drive I had, you know, if I'm going to put in for him, I'm going to work.
You're going to win.
I'm going to get it. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to do everything I can, minus a broken bone. You know, I'm going to get on this team. So he said, hey, you know, we got like 15, 20 people trying out. He's like, can you just focus on that and let other people have the chance? So I was like, yeah, absolutely. So everyone, well, not everyone. There was a couple people that passed, but we were going to fill 4 spots, and we couldn't get 4 people to pass the test. So that was a little bit of a kick, you know. I was like, man, I could have easily got that. I could have got on this team. But they ended up having a second tryout, and we filled the spots. And so fast forward to 2009, the dog was, like I said, he was still working strong, but things had changed. The dynamics, the dichotomy of the department had changed, where instead of being on a power shift, now you're on a shift. You know, you're working a sector. The support wasn't there. Like, we had changed chiefs, and it just wasn't what it used to be. So I could kind of see the writing on the wall. So I was like, well, let me try out again. So
there was a break in the program after that, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was a point in time where we didn't have any dogs. Yeah. So I tried out for the team in 2009, and I got on the team in 2009. So whenever I tried out, they didn't tell me that I was going to have to retire the dog. But then I got on the team, and they said, hey, you got to retire the dog, because you can't have 2 training days a month for the team, 2 training days a month for the dog. Like, you're not here enough. And we worked 10-hour shifts, so I still would have been there a lot. In my mind, I still would have been there quite a bit. But fair enough, you know, it's their dog. They said it's time to retire him. So, which kind of, again, you know, you're on a high because you just got on the team. I was gonna try to implement the dog on the team, because he was like at that point he was a robot. You know what I mean? Like, you know, 6-7 years into
Yeah.
training. Like they're just good, you know. So I was looking forward to the challenge of doing both, like learning to be an operator and implementing a dog, because we've never had that before either.
Be legit. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, so we ended up retiring the dog in 2009, and then got on the SWAT team in 2009. So that almost happened simultaneously. So, but again, he was still more than healthy. I mean, he didn't pass away till 2013, so he probably had at least another, probably 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years probably.
Yeah, I mean, especially with being a male, I mean, he could have worked. But it, you know, looking back at it, it was hard enough just
Balancing.
getting to be a good operator. Like it would have been super hard to do both, but again, it was a challenge that I was willing to accept.
Yeah, man. I think unless it's a full-time team, man, I think it's unless you're a full-time operator to handle a dog. If you're doing it right, you're doing it in good faith, and you're trying to provide a quality product.
Right.
I don't think it's, you know, like selfishly, I would love to put Loki on the team.
Sure.
I would love to be on the team, but it's just not. It's too much, man.
Yeah.
So much.
I agree. I mean, I've not seen, you know, we've had an operator that was a canine handler, and we've tried to do both, but really kind of came into, you know, if the dog was with him, like on a search warrant, and we knew the guy, you know, like we always put him on perimeter, you know, but most of the time, you know, he was an operator, and then he was a canine handler. It wasn't both, and it would have been tough to do both, but so started on the team, you know, in 2009, and it was
Didn't look back.
yeah. The book wrote itself, man. I loved it. Gave it again to the success of being on the team. Came at a huge cost everywhere else. I can specifically, you know, my older two daughters, you know, like, I went on every call out that I could. I did actually, you know, everything I could
So
do.
your older two daughters, I'm guessing you guys had shared custody or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what was the breakdown? Was it like 50-50 or what was?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yep.
What would you do with them whenever you got called out?
Well, by then I was married for a second time, so I did have, but also, you know, we had neighbors that were, you know, around, or families were always close, so it was never a problem getting the time, you know, being able to go.
Did you regret it at all? Like the impact that it made on your family?
Oh, 100. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't even have contact with my older two daughters. And again, it's because of the decisions that I've made, obviously, with divorces and everything else. But I mean, you can't. I wasn't a good dad. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you just can't. You can't be. I didn't have the discipline that I had to stay in the gym and to be the best operator and everything else. I didn't have that same discipline
At home.
At home, yeah. At that time in my life.
How old were you?
So 2009, I would have been early 30s. So second marriage, which was, again, not to get too deep in the weeds there, but it wasn't a healthy one, you know.
Yeah.
Things weren't going good for my daughters, and, you know, I covered it up the best I could, and, you know, probably did too much, like, closet drinking, and, you know, just wasn't, you know, like I wasn't in a good place for a while, but it never came at the detriment of.
Yeah, works when you had your stuff
Yep.
together, and then when you went home,
Yep.
things were just a mess, and then you went back to work and you had your things together,
Yep.
and went back home. Yeah. Dude, I've seen that play out hundreds of times.
I've seen that movie before.
Yeah, I've seen that movie before. How old were your kids then? How old were your daughters?
So
Old enough to recognize what was going on?
yeah, they would have been, you know, early teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like super important times in their lives.
Yep. So it's, you know, way different. Like, you know, I got my youngest one is 17 now. So to put it in perspective, my older two are 29 and 27. So big jump in time there. And I'm very, very much involved in the younger one's life.
For sure.
So it's like some of the things that I give her trouble about, or I'm like, God, I don't remember 15 being this bad. It's because I wasn't really around when they were 15. You know what I'm saying? They weren't. They spent more time with their mom those years. You know, so I just don't. You know, and I think they're different children. You know what I'm saying? Like my youngest one's a way more free spirited than they were, and is more active in school, and you know, her social life is way, again, different times too. But but I just, you know, I had to adapt to. I don't remember it being like this, and it's because it wasn't, and especially at home it wasn't like that. But you know, again, that's why I can say the trials and tribulations of what got me where I am now has changed how my married life now, my relationship with my youngest daughter, what I value is important and what isn't, you know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, if you could say anything back to the old Joe, what would you tell yourself? Now knowing all this and walking through this whole thing.
Man, we talk a lot about work-life balance, and I didn't have it.
Yeah. Just work all the time. When you weren't at work, you're thinking about work.
Yeah, plus it wasn't not only just I loved it so much. I love this profession. I can't imagine doing anything else.
It's hard to imagine doing anything else.
I'm a student of the game, and I just anything I can do to get better at the job I was doing, and it came at that cost. So I mean, you know, again, I don't know exactly what I would tell myself, but I think other people were telling me, and I just wasn't listening. You know, I can remember specifically having conversations or, you know, making stupid choices on personal life things, and like people calling me and be like, "Hey man, I know what you're doing, or I know where you're going, or I know what's happening here," and I'd be like, "No, man, I'm not." And so yeah, I mean, I wish I would have listened a little bit better. You know, I wish, but again, you know, what I was going back to is I did work a lot, not only because I loved it, but I needed it. You know, I needed the money, so I had to keep. You know, I was paying child support for 2. I had a house. I had responsibilities, and so working a lot was never an issue for me. It's just, you know, so now I actually struggle with, you know, when secondaries posted or when something comes up, I'm like, "Hey, should I work this?" My wife's like, "No, you don't have to work this." And I was like,
"We're good."
I know, but it's money. You know, like it's easy. I can sit in this chair and I can make money doing this. And she's like, "No, stop it. Like, just enjoy." You know, so it's taken many years for me to change that mindset. And I don't know why. I don't want to say that I do regret a lot of things, but it's got me where I am right now. So I do think that taking life experiences and being able to say, you know, and to speak to that and have credibility with that, you know, I can sit there and I teach. I used to teach at the academy a lot. I don't teach as much anymore, but I can sit there and I can tell a recruit, you know, I can talk about that hypervigilance and that cycle and you know, what happens if you don't have friends outside of law enforcement, and what happens if you fall in, you know, I can speak to those things, and I'm probably dangerously honest. You know, I probably say too much, but same thing, you know.
I don't think you can be dangerously honest, man. I truly think that guys have to recognize the shortcomings of this career. There are so many great things about being a police officer. So many awesome things. You get to help so many people. You're involved in situations, and you get to see and do things that nobody else in the world gets to do. But with that, you have to be very, very careful, you know. Sure. And I truly think that the more honest that we are with the next generation of law enforcement, the better cops we create. Because society doesn't want the dude that's, you know, divorced, stressed out for money, has 2 kids, staying up for 18 hours to try and get enough money so that way he can pay his bills, short-tempered, too many things going on, pulled in 900 directions. They don't want that guy showing up to their house. You know what I mean? They want the guy that has, a solid family life, is mentally in the right place, got a good night's sleep. And we don't do that for ourselves, like we don't put ourselves in the best position to win. We talk about this all the time on tactical stuff, breaking down barricades and breaking down houses and stuff like that. Make it difficult for them to hurt you. And it's like, okay, well, we'll do that tactically, but are we doing that mentally? Are we doing that spiritually? Are we doing that at home? Are we walking into work with a good outline of who we are as a person and what our moral compass is? Are we doing all of those things? Because now I truly feel that like law enforcement tactically has moved leaps and bounds, man. Like you guys are operating on the team so much better, and all that information slowly flows its way back to, the normal road guys. The way that we attack a barricade now, the way that we assault a car now, the way that we do all of the way that guys are covering me on tracks, all of these things, we're leaps and bounds ahead of it. But it seems like the thing that's slowing and like we just keep doing the same thing is our mental health, our spiritual health, our family life, us as dads. It's like, all right, man, we figured a lot of this out. And I'm not saying we can't get better. We can always get better tactically. But we figured a lot of it out, and we're putting ourselves in positions to win in those cases. But are we putting ourselves in positions to win on the opposite side of things? Why are so many cops killing themselves? Is it because, they made a bad decision at work? Like they made a bad tactical? No, it's not because they made a bad tactical decision at work. It's because they made bad decisions everywhere else surrounding work. And a lot of that, the statistics speak for themselves. A lot of that is because the lifestyle that we live with this job, it's the trauma, it's the things that we see, it's the high stress, it's the going nonstop, it's the shift changes, it's the everything that surrounds law enforcement. We're not implementing things to kind of protect ourselves there,
Yeah,
I don't know.
100%.
Get off my high horse, but
no, we're doing better, but
yeah,
we're still way behind.
Yeah, it's like, when you guys first started the team, the way you operated, was completely different than the way you guys operate now. You guys are a well-oiled machine, in my opinion, probably the best team in this region by far. You guys kill it. You guys do great work. And a lot of that is because guys like you early on in their career really dedicated themselves to it, but, at what detriment?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
What were we talking about?
I think we just talked about getting on team.
Yeah.
So, 2009 got on team. By 2014, about 5 years into being on team is when the opportunity came to get promoted to be a team leader. And that's about the same. It's after Ferguson, our department had gone to 12-hour shifts. We were making some promotions and stuff at work, and I felt like that was a good time to be promoted, to get to that next rank of sergeant.
At that point, I think I was at the police department, and you were already taking on a pretty big individual, leadership role.
Right. So things were going really good, but I really wanted I had two goals when I started the team. One was to get 10 years in to be a master operator, and two was to get to be a team leader. I really wanted those two things. So about the same time, I had a struggle there at work because do I put in for promotions at work? Because then you're off the team. If you get promoted, we had to leave. So do I do that or do I continue with this opportunity? And the team leader opportunity came just a little bit before the other one did. And my opinion, you don't ever pass up an opportunity for another future opportunity. You always got to take whatever's in front of you. So, got to be the team leader position came through, and that's really, again, looking back, I do feel like, being, an FTO and being a senior officer and everything else. But I think that, those were all leading me in a certain way. But when I got that team leader position, that's really when things really started clicking for me as far as leadership and supervision, and really trying to be a student of the game and learn, start reading books and start listening to podcasts and start really understanding what is a good leader and what is not a good leader, and looking at it's not now that you're a sergeant or a team leader, now you're above everybody else's. Now you got to work harder for them. You know what I'm saying? Like you're
servant leadership.
Yeah, 100%. So getting that position, really, I think, looking back at it, was a great transition for me. It was great to have that experience. I told myself then, being a sergeant on the team, if you will, a team leader, and getting those, to make those decisions and run search warrants and run barricades is going to pay off in the future. When the time comes to lead the team at 10 years, then I'll tack all that other stuff. And so great experiences, again, working a lot, by this point.
Do you think some of the things that you learned as being a leader on the team affected your home life, like in a positive way? I became a student in the game. I started reading books. I started focusing on like servant leadership. And
yeah, I think,
did you take some of those characteristics back home with you?
Yeah, I think a lot of things changed. So after being divorced the second time and finding my now wife, who's is a dream, she's fantastic. That's really when those kind of things kind of happened at the same time, if you will. So being on the team, getting that team leader, that leadership, and then getting right at home is really when things, for me, I would say, really changed.
Yeah.
In a way positive way.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter at the time, I think whenever me and my wife got married, I think she would have been like 6. So super formative years, and it's been everything's been, even though the divorce is hard, like the foundation and everything that we've set moving forward for her, and this marriage has been, I've remedied my mistakes, if you will.
Yeah, how long did the second marriage last?
About 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
It was just from the very beginning.
Yep.
From the jump, it was
all done for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But again, I got a great little girl out of it, so
yeah.
I'm not, you live and learn kind of a thing. But yeah, I was just as much to blame on that one too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I get it.
Yeah. I'd say, since we're talking, faith stuff, obviously born and raised Catholic, did a lot, all through high school, married in the Catholic church on the first one, got it annulled, married in the Catholic church on the second one. Didn't really do a whole lot in the Catholic church. I would say like the times I would ever, if you were like visiting family and they went to just a Christian one or a non-denominational one where there was guitar music and everything else going on, I always remember, saying that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
You don't have rock and roll bands in church, right?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be, stand, kneel, sit, kneel, stand, real structured. So those experiences that I would have outside of that, I thought were crazy. And then I wasn't going to go through the annulment process again. I wasn't that passionate, and I hate to say that, I wasn't that passionate about the Catholic Church. I still knew my place with God and Jesus, and I'm not super involved in it, but I had
some relationship there.
Yeah, I had my prayers when I did, but that was something that me and my wife do now. Is we found a Christian church, that's got a rock and roll band.
Yeah, baby.
That delivers life messages, like that I can understand, that I could relate to, that I could start, seeing as value in it. And I'm not saying that there's not in the Catholic Church. It's just,
I get you.
I don't have to. It wasn't. You can talk about the Gospels, and you're teaching me in a way that you're making it real.
It's practical to you.
Yeah. It's real life stuff. You're talking about real life things.
How do I implement this in my own life?
Mm-hmm. So,
like, what does it say and how do I do it?
Yep. It wasn't, just a message that we're reading and then, it was conversations and they were real people. And it was, and again, that's a product of.
How involved was God in your life up to that point? Like, did you go to church or was it a Jelly Roll song where it was like, I only call on God when I need something type thing?
Pretty much, yeah. That was, we were not, I was not going on a regular basis at all. I was probably like the Easter, Christmas Catholic person.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And which, again, my parents are still very devoted to their church. They read every Sunday. They're Eucharistic ministers. And I mean, they're very involved. And my dad still tries, in those moments where it's me and him in a boat, he still tries to get me to go back to the church. But at this point, I mean, not to muddy the waters, but I can't go to Catholic church and even receive communion.
Yeah.
Without doing a whole bunch of other things. So it's like, at this point,
I get you.
So
should there be a stipulation between you and God? But
I agree.
I think I want to jump back to one thing that you said earlier, is that you said people around you were telling you over and over again, like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And it was like, it was hard to take on that, to receive that communication. Right. And I think one of the cool things about, at least for me, is I can have someone tell me these things like, hey, Matt, you're messing up, and I should listen, right? But like, I think that my biggest driving factor to try and be a good dad and to try and be a good husband and to try and have that work balance is my relationship with God. It's like, I don't have to hear it from you, not that I don't respect you, I do, but I don't have to hear it from you. I can hear it from you, but then it's backed up biblically of who I'm supposed to be as a human and where my focus is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Should I focus so much on my relationship with God, which is what I'm called to do, or should I focus on trying to get all this, like, trying to reward my own ego at work? It's like, I want to be the baddest dude on the team. I want to be the baddest handler. I want to be the guy that everybody wants to hear that story from. Sure. It's like, am I doing that for myself, or am I doing that for my family? Am I doing that for my God? Or am I doing that strictly to serve my own ego? And I've noticed that in myself as I've grown up as a policeman and I've grown in my faith, is that if I stay focused on that serving God, if I stay focused on servant leadership to my family, and I stay focused on, like, building that relationship and trying to receive God and trying to, like, sacrifice for God, that it's more difficult for me to serve myself and my own ego and to go out to work and be like, I need to do this for myself. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. You know me personally. Inherently, I'm a tool. Like, I can't help it, man. It's just who I am as a person, and it's something I have to fight all the time. It becomes easier for me not to be a tool the more I stay focused on serving God. That's why I asked that question of, like, well, how in depth is your relationship with God as you're walking through all these times in your life where, like, you're serving yourself, you know Sure. what I mean? You're serving yourself at the risk of, your relationship with your kids, your relationship with your wife, or, and it seems like you've got to that point now where it's not so much about serving Joe, and it's more about serving Jen, and it's more about serving your kids, and it's more about serving the dudes that you work with, rather than, like, listen, I'm not saying you're an egomaniac. I'm an egomaniac, so I'm just saying that for myself, that if I don't check myself, man, my ego I will want to be the baddest dude. I want to be the strongest dude. I want to be the fastest dude. I want to have the best dog. I want to be on the SWAT team. I want to do all these things, and I'll just try and find that thing in myself, rather than, like, understanding who I am as a person and what God thinks about me.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to earn that. Like, he loves me just the way I am. Like, I don't have to earn the respect of the people around me in order to have a relationship with God. And I don't have,
Right. No, 100%.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's been something that's benefited me as I've walked through my career, and I've fallen short, and I've pulled away from the family to handle a dog, and I've pulled away from the family to do all these other things. When we're working with ATF and I'm getting called out all the time. As I pulled away from that role at the house to serve myself, it's like that constant reminder in the back of my head, like, who are you? Right. What are you? Where do you find your purpose, And that's really what this whole thing started from, is like, this is my way of making sure that God is an everyday part of my life, is by trying to tell these stories and the shortcomings of me and the shortcomings of the people that I interview, and giving that to the younger guys and giving that to society so they could see, like, listen, man, these are just dudes. You know what I mean?
That's why I'm here. I mean, I believe in what you're doing here. It's just
appreciate it, dude.
Yeah.
I really do. My goal is that dudes don't have to suffer in the future, because we already did. You know what I mean? Like, guys don't have to struggle because I did and you did.
Sure.
And unfortunately, so many dudes around us did. So let's jump back to your at that point, you're a team leader. Let's roll with that.
Yeah. Did that for till I guess it was all the way up till 2019. So I got my 10 years. January of 2019 is when I was involved in the shooting. So kind of basically like, one of my mentors, Derek Myers, like, summed up everything up to that moment. He said, that's everything you've done culminated down to that
day,
that second, that moment. And, really made a lot of sense to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, thinking about, every time you went to training, you took it serious. Every time you pulled the gun and did pistol shooting, you took it serious. Every time you did, that saying, what I do today, what others won't, so I can do tomorrow what others can't. Those kind of things, like, really started, just building a good mental toughness and mindset to everything. And that started, like I said, years and years ago, but I really started fine-tuning that when I was on the team and being a team leader and just reading and learning and just trying to soak all that up. So I got, I left the team and got promoted to sergeant in September of 2019. Fast forward to 2020, we got a different chief at the time, and so I knew that I was going to have to leave the team, and I did. And then a new chief came in, and I just, again, you're put in situations, you don't ever get to pick the moment picks you, right? So I happened to be working that day that the new chief came, and he called and said, hey, take me to lunch, and we sat down and had lunch, and he said, hey, he was a former SWAT guy all the way up to a team commander, and on the conversation, he's like, hey, did you ever think about going back, and would you go back, and why'd you leave? And so I kind of explained the whole how things work, and he's from a different state, so he's like, I think that's stupid.
Yeah.
So got back on the team in 2020, and then still as a team leader, they gave me my spot back, which was really cool. And then 2022 is when I got promoted to lieutenant and transitioned to now basically just doing training for them and like major events, major call-outs, being like a tactical advisor, sitting in the command post. But being a former action guy is what we call it.
Former action guy.
Action guy.
Love it. We don't have to jump too far in the weeds about your shooting, but I want to jump back there really quick and just kind of talk about a couple things that surround it. So what was the date? When was it again? What?
January
of 2019.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were off the team at that point? Had just gotten off the team?
I was still on the team.
Okay.
Yep. Still there.
So we won't, for people that are listening, there's obviously a bunch of stuff that goes along with these officer-involved shootings that, there's civil litigation and criminal litigation and so on and so forth. So I won't ask you too much about it because I know that there's certain things that may or may not be going on with it. But I want to talk more so about the post-incident. And obviously after my shooting, I remember waking up in the morning and I looked at my wife and we made eye contact with each other and we both had the same look on our face. And that look was like neither of us knew what was going on. You know, both of us were kind of lost. And I was caught extremely off guard because that's not the type of person I am. I like pride myself on not being lost, and I pride myself on being like the calm in the storm. And
sure.
and it was the first time in my entire police career where I really felt vulnerable, if that's the right word to use, I guess. That my life and the things and everything was in other people's hands. You know, like in the situation, I was able to control the outcome through my training, through my experience. I was able to make decisions that I felt put me back in control. Like I was back in the driver's seat. Although I wasn't in the driver's seat at the beginning, I was back in the driver's seat. And I think that's what we do as police officers, especially the real A-type guys, is like we put me in the seat. Like, you know, I want to be there at that time doing that thing so I can control the outcome of it. And waking up the next day after my shooting, and I felt like I wasn't in control, and it bothered me, man. And I'd never really experienced anxiety in my entire life. I'm like the least anxious person in the world. Like I do a really good job of, like my wife is a very anxious person, and I talk to her all the time, like, just give it to God. You know, just give it to God. Just give it to God. What I can't control, give it to God. And I do a really good job with that. But this is the first time in my life where I was really struggling with like just controlling my own thought process, you know. And I felt super vulnerable. And like I said, I started to become super anxious about just everything that was going on, and you know what this led to and what this meant for my family and so on and so forth. And like to the point where one night I woke up after my shooting, and this was a couple days after, and my body was just covered in hives. Like I'd like a physiological reaction to how anxious I was. Right. That's super out of the norm for me. So that's kind of why we started this organization, so dudes don't have to feel alone, and we can provide them like some mental health treatment like immediately, within the first 24 to 48 hours. Like our goal is to give those dudes somebody to call when things like that are going sideways. And I want to know how you felt afterwards. Like, how'd you process it? Spiritually, how'd you process it?
Okay. Yeah, so to kind of set the parameters here, you know, we talked a lot about leading up to that day. But, again, I had, you know, I think you're, you know, they always say basically like you are what your friends are kind of a thing. But, you know, my core group of people, my five or whatever, like, you know, I think I've surrounded myself with super solid people, right?
Yeah.
So I've had that team, that support system that I can always stay calibrated with, and I can always lean on those people.
I love it.
So going into the whole thing, you know, it was me, a mental health worker, and then the suspect that were present at the time. So when everything went down, obviously it wasn't just, you know, me and a suspect. It was a victim involved there. So it made the my decisions to act again almost.
You trained it.
Yeah, I mean it was.
You worked through it.
Yeah, there was no issues at all. So obviously, I had a very different experience than you. I never felt like I wasn't in the driver's seat. You know, when other officers showed up, I was giving them instructions on what to do, and you know, I pride that in, like Derek Meyer said, like that was 20 years, 25, you know, 20 something years of everything leading up to a moment. So all the working out, you know, to stay physically healthy, all the, you know, I'd love to have 17 Mountain Dews in a day, but I hold myself to one, you know, like everything leading up to that was, you know, the day before we had SWAT training, and I stayed at lunch. You know, I was running the range because, you know, as a team leader, as a senior operator, you know, you're responsible for training. So, you know, I had to run the range that day. And So I didn't get a chance to shoot. So I stayed at lunch to shoot so I could get my reps in, just to stay sharp. And so this was leading up to that, this was a long investigation. This was a long situation leading up to that day.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened that I
went to a call with you at that house 2 weeks prior.
Yep.
I remember thinking about it.
Yep. And, it's the first time that I had talked to that mental health worker, but I never had been on a call with her before. And, she had helped out with the same household before. So a lot of things led up to that moment. And again, I never felt like I had zero issues with doing what I was put there to do. Again, the moment you don't get to pick the moment, right?
Yeah, the moment picks you.
So, and you never rise to the occasion. You always fall back to your training. So, the only issue that I don't even want to say anxiety. The only part of anything that I wasn't confident in, or that I had any, I guess we'll use the word anxiety toward anything, was we didn't have body cameras at the time, but we found out that he had cameras inside of his house. So I was so confident in everything that I did. I was so confident in all my tactics and moving around and positioning myself and how it went down and how I remembered it in my brain. And even after the sleep cycles, I'm like, man, I'm 150% confident that
Isn't
I did.
it bizarre?
Sure.
I think it's
100% bizarre.
It's insane.
You can teach it. I teach all that at the academy. And you talk about, what your brain does and how many sleep cycles you need. And I was like,
from day one, man, I remembered it almost identical.
Yeah. And your brain, it's like a recorder, man. I mean, it's got it all in there. You just got to
work through it.
Yeah. You just got to sit down and let it process, and then you remember it all. But the only thing that I was ever worried about is watching it on camera to see if it was different than how it was in my brain. You know what I'm saying? That was the only thing that I was ever worried about, because I didn't want to not perform to that level, because
100%.
I hold myself to that standard. I've trained that so many times, and so, I gave my statement and everything else before I ever watched it.
Me too.
And then I finally did get a chance to watch it, and it was exactly how I remembered it. It was as fast as I remember it. And
do you think that there's a reason? Because I know a lot of times they talk about how dudes just, it's like their brain shuts off and they can't recall certain things, and it's like the processor shuts down. Mm-hmm. And I kind of attribute my ability to stay calm in that situation and my ability to remember everything that happened to those high-risk deployments where you're operating at that. I think of my brain as like a, I don't know how many RPMs, right? So I'm operating at, you never want to be operating at 9,000 RPMs, you know what I mean? Like you've passed the rev limiter,
sure.
So, putting yourself in so many situations, for example, with the dog, and then on the SWAT team, and me with a dog, and then all the stuff we did with those federal agencies, is you rev all the way up to that 7,000 RPMs, right? And you just do that over and over again, and nothing happens, and nothing happens, and nothing happens, and nothing happens. But when it does happen, you've been at that.
Sure.
You've been at the pinnacle. You know what I mean? You put yourself in that position, and I feel like that's why I could remember it. You feel like that's the same for you?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like Montana Stevenson always says, like,
I love him, by the way.
Yeah, great guy. He's one of my core foundation guys. But he always used to say, like, that we could operate at that, like, on calls and stuff, on call outs and stuff with the team. Like, you're up here, but your brain is still right here. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can, under stress, you can still think things through. You can still process everything. You can still. And again, that's because
a trained behavior.
Yeah, you're operating, you're training yourself to be able to do that. You inoculate yourself with that stress. You take it in, because again, as a 1-year operator, I didn't think the same way. That's why you make mistakes, right? You get introduced to all that stress, and you start to red line and do those things, and yeah, it's just conditioning. Like you're able to do it. So So that's where, I was more concerned that how I performed, not what I did, because, you get put, and that's, and that's where, that's, I always used to tell people, ahead of time, like, not knowing, never been through a shooting before, but you listen to people say, man, I got so close, man. I can remember, like, touching the trigger.
Pulling slack out of the trigger, bro. I've heard 9,000 of these stories, dude.
It's like, man, I almost did. And I always tell people, like, when the moment comes,
you'll know.
Yeah, it's not, you won't know if you're pulling the slack, because it's that, at that moment in time where you're like, death or not death, and so those times where, you had time, distance, and cover, and you might have been like, hey, man, if you don't drop the knife, you're coming this way, and you might remember doing those things. That's because your not
brain
there yet.
is there. Yeah, it's like, okay, we're good.
Right.
I remember it was
Yep.
It was just like,
sure,
you're operating, then you're operating.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like, it was never a question.
100%.
It was never like a shoulda. It was, you need to.
Yep. And that's where, again, you kind of become part of, a different group that, because again, statistically, very small percentages of police officers get involved in shootings, though it seems like it's happening more and more. Yeah. But so I'm sure
specifically in our area, it seems like it's happening way more.
I think that that number's climbing. I think it used to be like 5% of all police officers get involved in shootings. It might even be less than that. So I think that number's growing. But I speak to that whenever I do civilian classes. Like, when the moment comes and you feel like someone's truly going to take your life or threaten your life or your people, you'll know what to do. You can't say, well, what if this and what if that? Like, when that moment hits you, you just know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, again, working through after the fact, I walk out of the house and the very first person I see, because again, I'm orchestrating things. I'm doing CPR, I'm handcuffing, I'm securing guns, and then you walk out and the very first person I see is Brandon Jones. Again, great guy, SWAT medic, so
he's there for mine too.
So I see a guy and he's like, hey, and he's like, come with me, man. And immediately, you got your people, man.
Layer of protection almost.
You got that, you spend your life building bridges, man. And it's for those moments when you need that, and in this profession, you don't have to be a blue flamer. You don't have to like write a million, you build a good name brand and you be a good person. And that's all it really takes. It's just
dude. Nobody wants to. Nobody cares. At least in my opinion. I don't care if a guy working next to me can write 700 tickets a year. I don't care.
Right.
It doesn't. I don't care. Like, good on you if that's what you want to do, as long as you're squared away in other things. Sure. Because when things go sideways, I don't want the ticket writer. I want the meat eater with me.
Sure.
And I think it's pretty neat to hear you talk through this, because it's like, I know the person behind the thing. It's like other people listening to this don't know you personally, but that the fact, it really is. You were the dude that was preparing and preparing and preparing and preparing and preparing. And then when things went sideways, to hear, well, did you know Joe did this and he's calling out this and he's doing this, he's rendering aid here, and you worked through it like everything that you've ever been told to do. You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, again, that's where, and I think I told you the same thing. When you're in training now, after something like this happens,
you take training way more serious.
Yeah, what you say and what you do and how you do it is now means more.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the standard.
Yeah, to a guy looking around, like, if Matt Frigovic's being a clown or not doing his stepping off the X or not doing his blood sweeps or not doing his tourniquet right or not paying attention to whatever it is, even if it's legal up, like if you're being a clown, then he's going to be a clown. But he's like, man, that's why the dude performed the way that he did, because he does it. He takes it serious. And I can remember, telling the detective whenever he took my gun, I was like, hey, man, I just shot yesterday. I shot probably 300 or 400 rounds at lunch. I was like, I didn't clean it. I didn't have time to clean. I didn't think,
this
I didn't
think this was going to happen today.
Like, that's what you're worried about right now? I was like, yeah, man, because you always clean your gun when you're done shooting. And I said, I shot enough to then eat a sandwich and then got back to shooting with the team. And I said, I just didn't get a chance to clean it. And he's like, I think you'll be all right. And I was like, okay. But I mean, those are the things, you know, when you guys getting back to it, I've always been ready for it. Is that, and I'm not saying that every day you go into it saying that it's going to happen, but I've never had that, you know, that mindset. Well, I shouldn't say that. Probably as a young cop, I wasn't where I am, but ever since, you know, the experiences with the K-9 and then getting on the team and changing gears, and now people, you know, they expect more out of you. They look up to you like you're doing more training. Your department is more relying on you because of where you're at. That transition was, you know, it's not if, it's when, and just always be ready for it. So to see, you know, my actions afterwards and how I was, you know, my recovery was quick and everything was 100% good to go because of being mentally prepared, and then to see the opposite in the victim that was there. You know, she never thought that was ever going to happen. Was never thought, you know, never prepared for it, and it took her a really long time with a lot of help, you know, to get there. And again, I think it's just two completely different arenas.
Polar opposites, yeah.
Sure. But I mean, that's the pride that you have in yourself, and that's the, you know, like whenever people would, you know, after it happened, they're like, oh, you know, because again, it doesn't, you know, out here in 2019, I think we had the shooting prior to that was maybe like 4 or 5 years prior to that, and then 4 or 5 years prior to that. So
there's been a trickle effect, though.
Yeah, and now
a significant increase
in this county. You're talking about it happens
several,
you know, on the monthly now.
Yeah.
So, but at that time, it wasn't that frequent. And when people were said, "Hey, man, we had an officer involved shooting," and everybody said, "Hey," when they found out it was me, they're like, "Oh man,
at least it was him.
That's the dude that should have been there." You know what I'm saying? And that makes you feel really good because you're like, man, that you know, you've put in the time. It almost kind of, you know,
it's your Super Bowl.
Yeah,
it's your Super Bowl.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like Travis Kelce is supposed to perform as Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Except when Travis Kelce ain't getting shot at, but you know what I mean? That was your pinnacle. That was your moment. That was the thing that you'd been preparing for forever. And I do think, you know, what you said is like, I was supposed to be there. I think that sometimes people question, I say this, I feel like God put me in that position on that day for a reason.
Sure.
And like people are like, oh, okay, whatever. But I truly do feel like I was put in that position on that day for a specific reason. You know, the guy standing next to me has, I don't know, 9 months in law enforcement or something. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
You know, it's just, and I think you can attest to that. It's like, you know, I felt like I was supposed to be there. I think you felt that you were supposed to be there. And a lot of the dudes that I know that have been preparing for this thing for a really long time and that have taken their law enforcement career seriously and have stayed in that, like, I don't know, overuse the word like warrior mindset, but stayed in that where you're focused on it. A lot of the dudes I know is like, I was supposed to be there. That was my thing. That was my moment. That was, God has been preparing for me for this for a really long time. Speaking of that, is what was your, like, processing it with, like, you in like a religious sense or like with a God sense? How'd you feel?
Again, man, I had zero issues. I remember going to church shortly after that, because that was on a Friday, so Saturday or Sunday, and went with Montana and Kristen, and I just felt like you know, afterwards they always have, you know, somebody up there if you want to say a prayer or whatever else. So I said, hey man, would the three of you come up here with me? And so I probably shocked the shit out of this lady. She's like, oh,
what do you want me to pray for?
Yeah, she's like, yeah, what can I help you with? And I was like, well, I said, I'm a police officer, and I said I was involved in a shooting a couple days ago, and I shot and killed a man, you know. And she had this stare on her face like, I don't what, you know, like, yeah. It took her a minute, and Montana actually had to like step in and kind of like help her process it for a minute. And I said, I just feel like, I said, I'm okay. I don't know maybe just say a general prayer for him or his family or whatever. I mean, because again, I do, you know, like that warrior creed, man. Like if today you choose to do battle with me, well, I'm going to give it everything I got. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not the biggest, strongest, fastest, the best at, you know, not by far, but you might take my lunch, but I'm going to get my fruit snacks and my drink back. You know what I'm saying? Like you're going to get, I'm going to make you pay for what you did. You know what I'm saying? And so I never, and I guess I never really changed that mindset with it, because I don't think, and again, thinking about it ahead of time, like people have been killing and with, not with God's approval, but I mean, you know what I mean? But I mean, like there's the Crusades, and like there's been people that have done it for hundreds and hundreds of years. And you know, again,
there's so many biblical examples. That's part of what we do in our packet that we provide guys is, I sat down with pastor of this church, Steve Colon, and we broke down every biblical reference where lethal force is used, or where people take up arms, and with the, I don't want to necessarily use the word approval, but with the guidance of God. Yeah. And, you know, it's because I feel like it's important. I felt closer to God after that moment than I've ever felt in my entire life. I had a super spiritual experience that, you know, one day I'll probably talk about. Sure. The night of my shooting, I just couldn't sleep, and I had an experience that just like blew my mind. But I felt closer to God than I've ever felt in my entire life, man. I felt like that was the first time in my entire life I ever prayed like vulnerably, like where I was like, I really need you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I've had a pretty good life, you know. It was like that was a big moment in my life, and that was the first time I ever really sat down and I prayed to God, where I felt like I was praying to him with conviction, like I was praying about something that really mattered and something that was real, not only for me but for that family and for that guy, man. It was like I felt I prayed like I had never prayed before, and I had a response that I had never had before, and I felt like I said, I felt closer to God than I've ever felt, and that was the catalyst to starting this organization, is that night after my shooting, or the night of my shooting, praying to God and having that experience. I felt like God was telling me later on, after I worked through this process a little bit more, I felt like God was like, you need to do something about this. Like dudes need this. Dudes need me. Dudes need me specifically in these incidents, because he gave me a level of peace that I can't really explain, man. It was super crazy. Yeah,
I mean, and I think that's
also powerful, like I've never experienced.
100%. I mean, you also have that, you know, that joy for life, that, you know, like, hey man, this could have went a different way. Like if he was more prepared than me, or, you know, or whatever, I could not be here. You know what I'm saying? So you have a newfound appreciation for your people and life. And so, and again, so that's how, I mean, I had zero, I don't even, like, I wouldn't even say I had zero remorse. I didn't feel like I did something wrong at all. You know, I felt like, you know, I was there for a reason. His actions dictated what I needed to do. And it just, I wanted it to be, like I said, I only wanted to make sure that I performed how I thought I should. And once I watched the video and saw it, I was like, and then, you know, you get, and then again, in a weird way, you know, you want to find out, like,
well, what is it?
Yeah. How did your rounds, you know, like you want to find the logistics of everything. But I mean, again, man, I didn't have that, what's going to happen to me next. I never had the sleepless nights, you know. I
think my biggest anxiety towards the whole thing was just the whole investigation and the process of, you know, there had been things that happened in our department shortly before that were an absolute disaster as far as, you know, investigations went and everything else. And just that whole process of like being judged by people that don't tote guns, you know what I mean? That never done this job before. And, you know, if I knew that you were investigating me, I'd be like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, sure, Joe's been there, he's done that. But just the whole process of being investigated by, you know, somebody in somewhat of a political role, just I don't know, man. It's just that was what most of my anxiety was towards, was just the whole process of working through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, even, I show up, you go to the hospital just to get your vitals and everything done. 'Cause obviously, your body's reacting.
Yeah.
You don't even know it, but
Yeah.
blood pressure's up and everything.
Subconsciously things are going on.
But I show up there and, my wife showed up and, guys on the team showed up. I immediately had people, my daughters showed up, so like I had a good support group there, and then, went to dinner that night. I mean, everything, like it was very smooth for me, just cause I knew, I was in a good place. I knew that my actions were justified. I knew I didn't fear an investigation. I don't know. I don't know why. Cause trust me, at that time, we had a different command. Like it was way different than what it was, for years. So that would, I didn't even fear that, it was just, I just knew, that everything was going to be right. I just knew it was going to be good.
Do you think there's anything that, so our organization, obviously the goal is to always get better and to grow, and to really provide services that guys need. And you kind of know most of what we've done because we've talked outside of this podcast. Is there anything you'd recommend that we do that you think would help? Like even if it's for your family or something like?
Well, again, I was in a better place because my wife had been in law enforcement. She's back in law enforcement now.
I'd like to have her on and get her perspective of it too.
100%.
It'd be pretty cool to.
She's got a lot. Her part in a lot of this, is pretty dynamic as well. So, I know I've already talked to her about it. I think she would love to. But from the moment that, Brandon called her and we, I had word, like she knew I was good. Derek Myers, I made contact with him. He was out of town, and he even knew that he
seems to be a thing.
Yeah, he didn't like the fact that I was
there.
going there. He knew something bad was going to happen, but that phone call happened, and he got things in motion. But my wife called her brother, who's a chief of police. He's done that other side of it. So within, before I even got to the hospital, I think FOP had been everything worked very well. So some of the things that were really helpful after the fact was like that critical incident stress management debrief. Had so much of an effect on me that I'm a member of that team now. Again, because it provides that opportunity to cry if you need to cry, talk if you need. Like everyone that's involved gets it, comes in, and like from the dispatcher all the way down to the EMT, like everybody comes in. They just get to whitewash the whole thing and get to talk it all out, which is great. Those are those. And again, if a guy's struggling, or like that's when you start seeing those things. Those are those behaviors that you start. And again, that was the first time our department's ever done it. Since then, we've done it for.
Yeah, we did it for you guys. Did it for mine.
A whole bunch of different things now. And again, it's just those people that were involved. That's not a tactical debrief, and I think that the way that the departments handle it plays a lot into the recovery process and how things get resolved. Because, again, me and Derek Myers sat down and we went through like different blocks, like, assault indicators and different things that like all the way through to the shooting, and then after shooting, and then like, what happens with the spouse. And like we had all these different things broke down to now try to train, like let's have some type of a training class. Team. Let's put this out there. Let's show, let's put the video together. Let's put all this out. Let's start talking about things. And especially with, that the mental health people, like nothing like this has ever happened for them, so that was a really good way of moving through, and thinking about all the different steps that we took and all the precautions that we took. And then the department said, and said, no go. So sometimes, the way that the department treats the officers, whether, even if you're still, hey man, these guys are, poking and prodding into, whether I did something right or wrong. but it's really about overall, like how is the department backing you? You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that was kind of hard for me to get through, because I was like, you know, they pulled the plug on a lot of different things. You know what I'm saying? Almost kind of like, you know, like it didn't kind of happen, kind of thing. And I'm like, man, there's so many good lessons that can be taught here. And and then you see, you know, you go to, you know,
nothing gets accomplished by avoiding it.
Yeah, I mean, you go to like a CIT conference, or you go to a National Tactical Officer conference, like you go to these different canine conferences, and there's people that speak to different things, right? Because they've been involved, and I'm like, wow, like how impactful is that? Like, and that's good for that person as well. Like
Yeah, dude, this whole process of starting this whole organization, meeting up with guys, being able to, I'll tell you what, man, when we helped the dudes from the county next door, meeting with the first guy and looking into his eyes and just seeing where he was at, man, and knowing that I was going to provide him with all of these things that I felt could help him, dude, you know, it was like, it takes it to another level, man. It really does. And I couldn't imagine, you know, like going through this and then not trying to do something. You know what I mean? Not trying to make the situation better, and just, you know what I mean? Like you guys sat down and tried to create this whole thing, and unfortunately, you know, luckily, you know, command changes and decisions, and chiefs come in and other people, you know, in our departments, you know, but very proactive now. But
but again, I mean, that's where the critical incident stress debriefs come in. And now it's a regular thing. Peer-to-peer is a regular thing now. You know, like, so there's a lot of good things that came out of it that I didn't even know came out of it. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that, you know, right after, I mean, I was out of town, like you said. I mean, the ones that you always, the ones that you look to help you are not in town. But, you know, when I got the phone call, I was like, immediately, you know, told you know, a wife, A, B, C, D, like, do these things. This is what should happen. You know, put them, you know, because again, there's a huge, that's a dynamic that they're not prepared for. They don't. Most, you know, I was extremely lucky. Like, my wife has law enforcement family. You know, brothers are all in law enforcement. I'm in law. She was, you know, like,
it was,
and she had a great relationship with my boss. You know what I'm saying? Like, she knew, you know, like we broke bread before. Like, we have that bond. You know, she knows Montana. Like so, keeping them, you know, getting them involved in not with big groups, but I mean, like,
we're trying to do that right now, actually. Annette Jansen, Grant's wife. I'm trying to get the funding together for her to start doing like either monthly or biweekly counseling sessions with cops and their wives. It'd be like a group session, so you and your wife would come to this thing. You'd sit down. You know, she's awesome. I don't know if you know her personally, but she's a fantastic lady. But, you know, if we can get the funding right, she do, you know, either biweekly or monthly sessions with the partnership, because like you said, man, it's not just, you know, my wife had to receive a phone call saying, hey, Matt was just involved in an officer-involved shooting. He's being transported to the hospital.
Right.
You know what I mean? So she, unlike you and I, who have stayed in that position forever, she doesn't stay in that position. You know what I mean? She doesn't stay in that position, man. Right. So it's equally, you know, difficult for her to process. And also, you know, hopefully by doing things like this, we can kind of give a little bit of preparation for what to expect, you know, and what might happen and how they might feel, so they're prepared for it. You know, because behind every good policeman, most good policemen, is a fantastic wife that's doing a lot of the behind the scenes, picking up the slack with the kids, picking up the slack at the house, you know. And Kate, you know Kate, dude, she's
fantastic,
the best. You know what I mean? I lucked out.
Yeah. You said that from the very beginning.
I know, dude. I lucked out, dude.
As soon as we all saw her, we're like, yeah, you're way out kicking your coverage, bro.
Hey, dude. You know, sometimes you win.
Yes.
You know,
sometimes you do. Yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just I think we're moving in the right direction. Again, we're extremely fortunate here to have these different programs, to have good, you know, peers and that have had people involved in things that you can relate to, that someone can pick up the phone. You know, I mean, I carry everyone that's on the platoon that I work with, they all have my phone number. Their spouses have my phone number. I have their names. You know, I carry it in my phone so that that's not the, you know, like,
the logistics aren't
like
the problem.
when the phone call happens, like, you know, they're not like, well, whose number is this? You know, they should already have all that. You got to do a lot of that pre-work, but, you know,
it's a great idea.
A lot of these police departments, a lot of these counties, like, they don't have that, man. And so this is a great thing, you know.
I want to work here. I want to get our stuff regimented. This is the exact reaction that we're going to get. And then, you know, start growing further and further away, because, you know, we have a pretty large budget and we have a bunch of super awesome administrators. And I think about, you know, the more rural counties, more rural places that, you know, half the department is a reserve, you know, and how that guy is going to feel and what resources he's going to get. And if nothing else, man, if I can get a counselor in their hand, if I can get some scripture in their hand from the very, very beginning, so they can start that healing process early on, you know, 24, 48 hours into it, rather than, you know, 2-3 weeks where they've already, you know, they're behind the 8 ball. You know, that's my big goal, man.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, no one should ever have to feel that what happens next feeling, or no one's around, you know, like what. And again, you know, I was lucky to be 20 plus years in my career before it happened. You know, you had time on, like, again, what if it is that 1, 2 year, 5 year guy that just doesn't have that?
Well, think about it, man. Like you said earlier, like, when did you switch over? When did you decide? Sure. When did you go from I'm a policeman to I really am a policeman? Like, these are the things that I do. This is how I prepare myself mentally. This is how I prepare myself spiritually. When did you make that switch over? You know, I can't tell you specifically for me. I know it was a lot earlier because I had guys like you in Montana and guys that really kind of stressed that idea to me, and, you know, DM, that really stressed that idea to me pretty early on in my career. And I got a dog early on in my career, so the risk was a lot higher. So I had to, like, either, you know, rise to it and start preparing myself, or, you know, roll over, I guess. But, you know, at what point do we decide to take that seriously? And a guy that's been a year in, he's just trying to figure out how to handle a fraud, dude. Right. You know what I mean? Like, he's still learning how to serve an ex parte. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't. Right. He's not there yet, unfortunately. And, you know, I love what you guys are doing at the academy. I'd love to, you know, eventually put together a course from our organization to try and, you know, push that a little bit more. But the fact that guys like you are teaching at the academy, because I know, you know, you don't get paid $1 million to teach there, but we need dudes like you, and we need the Montanas, and we need the DMs, and we need those guys influencing the next generation of law enforcement. And like you said, dude, you got so much experience with things you may not want to do, and also things that you should be doing. Makes a really well-rounded class for a dude. But
and again, man, you know, it's the next generation of guys like yourself at our place that are forming these next, you know, like, you got to be that example, man. You got to be that guy that, because again, people are going to, when you say something, it holds more weight. You know, just because it gets everything that you've done so far, and, you know, like, got to be there for those people. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we're moving in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. All right, dude. I'll wrap it up because it's been a hot minute. So I don't want to keep you here all day. I know you got things to do, but truly appreciate you coming on, man. And if there's anything that we as an organization can do, obviously we're going to send you guys to Florida next year, you and the wife. Super pumped to do that, man. I can't wait. I've been in communication with those guys. So shout out to 10-7 Fishing. You guys are awesome. Appreciate everything you guys are doing. Thanks for working with me. And I look forward to sending you guys down there. And any last words? Anything else?
If you want to have me back, I would be honored to do it.
Yeah, dude.
I know my wife would love to do it too.
Yeah, I'll reach out to her. I want to have her on. I just want to get her perspective. I think it's important that, you know, the audience sees that this is more than just, you know, law enforcement affects more than just the dude. You know what I mean? Or in some cases the female, but it affects more than just the person that's wearing the badge. That it's a a commitment from the entire family. So
100%.
Maybe I'll let Kate interview her or something. That'd be pretty sick.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
100%.
All right, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. I appreciate you guys' support. I appreciate you guys listening to the episode all the way through. Like I said, the 1078 project has had a little bit of difficulties getting notified of officers that have been involved in officer-involved shootings. So if you are aware of an officer, feel free to go to 1078project.com. You'll see on our website there's a space where you can refer officers. Just fill out all the necessary information. We just ask that you give us a little bit of information about the officer, maybe the police department he works at, if he's married, how many kids he has, just so we can design the box to the best of our ability to make sure we're supporting that officer and his or her family as well as possible. Again, guys, thanks for the support. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, share the podcast, and until next time, hang in there, boys.
Deem Fit is an activewear and athleisure company for first responders. Established in 2022, we have first responders from all over the country now purchasing our gear. Our main goal is to get first responders physically and mentally fit, deemed fit for duty. We've already raised $15,000 for first responder organizations such as Tunnels to Towers and Beyond the Badge New York. Visit our website, www.deemedfit.co, and follow us on Instagram at deemed_fit for more information on what we do and what we provide for first responders.